Avoid cliches like the plague, because they go in one ear and out the other, over the top of people's heads, and they're like water off a duck's back. Pretty good, right? The reason we want to avoid cliches in our speaking is because they're not novel information. Your audience have heard them all before, and they do go over their heads, to use the cliche appropriately. If we look at some of the neurochemistry of your brain, when your brain hears something novel, your dopamine is activated. Dopamine is your reward chemical. It's the chemical that you get when you get a notification on your phone, when you find food, when you're hungry, when you accomplish a goal or achievement. When you give your audience this novel information, you're spicing up their biochemistry. And you're never going to spice them up and make them feel energized and alert if you give them stuff they've heard before. What you're going to learn in this video is how you can replace those cliches with novel, exciting information that's going to light your audience up like a Christmas tree. Oh, I did it again. I was listening to a podcast interview a couple of years ago with someone who is very famous and established in the brain learning neuroscience area. And I'd seen some of his work before, and I was actually quite interested and excited to hear an interview with him. I had seen some more of his presentation speech style of communication, and so I wanted to hear more of the interview style of communication. But in this interview, how can I put this? We have an expression in Scotland called dragging the arse out of something. Ass to North Americans. And it means where you're saying something or doing something without really getting anywhere. And the interviewer kept on trying to ask more questions, to find more detail about their story and their journey and their experience. And they kept on coming up with these sound bites and these cliches. And I was actually getting quite frustrated because I wanted to find out more about them as a person. And it seemed that they wanted to just put forward this facade of these phrases and statements that would stick with the audience. And I could sense that the interview was trying to nudge and probe a little bit further. He said, okay, right, like take us back to the beginning. Where did this all start for you? I'll never forget the statement that came out as a reply. Well, I turned my mess into a message. Really, my pain into purpose. I realized that the last chapter of my story didn't have to be the next chapter of my story. I turned off the podcast, deleted the episode, and went to the next one on the podcast. I was just so frustrated that they just couldn't give an in-depth, interesting, novel answer. It was just soundbite after soundbite. And that's not what you want to do for your audience. You don't want them to sit back and go, oh, I've heard this all before, blah, blah, blah. You want them to go, oh, I wasn't expecting this. I thought I knew everything about this topic, but here I am hearing something new. You want to give them that novelty, that excitement. And what we're going to do to help you give that novelty and excitement is look at, well, how can you replace any cliches that you might be using in your speeches? As always on these videos, I have 3 suggestions for you, coming right up, quick as a flash. Damn it, stop it, David, stop using cliches. The first suggestion, instead of using a cliche, just make it a statement. Instead of starting this video with avoid cliches like the plague, just say avoid cliches. Then you get the power of the statement without getting the passiveness of the cliche that everyone's heard before. And you might think that, oh, well, doesn't this weaken my speech? Doesn't this weaken my description? And you've seen some of my other videos where I talk about using elaborate language and thinking of new ways to communicate the idea. But that's just it. New ways. If you're using a cliche, it's not a new way. You're not going to have that moment of novelty with the audience. So rather than wasting your breath, your words, and time with a cliche that doesn't resonate, just turn it into a statement. Make it something punchy, because at least that punchiness has a little bit of attention grabbing for your audience. Avoid cliches. Your audience go, oh, right, okay, well, yeah, got it. Avoid cliches. What's coming next? Nice and easy first one for you there. No beating around the bush. The second thing to do for cliche is instead of using the cliche, come up with your own imagery or analogy. Let's say, for example, I'm starting off with avoid using cliches. Okay, so I've turned it into a statement and avoided the cliche, but can I make that a little bit more descriptive and a little bit more eye-popping for my audience? Yes, I can, but I need to do it in my own way. So instead, I might say something like, avoid cliches. Cliches are like peeing your pants. They make you feel good, but your audience don't appreciate it. Do you see how I've taken something different there and I've created a new image for the audience? Instead of avoid cliches like the plague, avoid cliches like the plague used to be really effective when people first said it and they went, oh, wow, like avoid it like the plague. Oh, yeah, oh, diseased bodies and coughing and awful. It worked when it was novel, but as soon as it stopped being novel, it didn't work. So creating the new analogy or imagery that is novel creates that same effect. Then the audience are starting to think about peeing pants. It's kind of toilet humor. There's a little bit of funniness in there. There's a little bit of self-deprecation in there as well. So that's a way you could create a new effect, creating new images for your audience's mind. Because when people say avoid it like the plague anymore, you don't actually think of people who are ill. You don't think of the plague. You don't think of all those horrible things because it's no longer novel and we don't process that information the same way. We hear the words, but we don't feel the effect of those words. That's suggestion number 2. Suggestion number 3 is coming up after this short intermission. Right, look, okay, I had to say that one, okay, because there is going to be an intermission. They're going to hear about the Ryzen Inspire Facebook group, aren't they? What do you want me to call it? That isn't it? Cut the live feed, cut the live feed. Our Facebook group, Ryzen Inspire Speakers, provides you with a safe, supportive community to develop the skills to get your message out into the world. We host a virtual summit, Inspire Week, within the group every month where you can sign up for a 30-minute slot to speak live in the group. This is a free opportunity you can sign up for month after month to practice your skills, try new things, and refine aspects of your story and message. There is a ton of educational content that gets pumped into this group. You can access ongoing educational resources that help you gain more confidence on camera, create more compelling speech content, and develop a deeper connection with your ideal audiences. Speaking of connection, the members of our community are fantastic. They are like-minded people who, just like you, want to make a difference in the world and will cheer you on and encourage you every step of the way. If you want to master your virtual speaking skills, then this is the place to be. The third way that you can avoid the cliches is to play with an existing cliche. Now, this can be a lot of fun. This is where you take one of these common turns of phrases and you go into it and you fool your audience into thinking it's going to be that common turn of phrase. Instead of my avoid cliches like the plague, what if I said avoid cliches like the tax man? Your audience's brain is making predictions as you're talking, and our brain likes to predict things right. And when it predicts things right, it gives a little quiet, smug smirk to itself, but it's only a quiet, smug smirk. When our brain is predicting one thing, but something else happens, boom, it goes, whoa, wait, hang on, hold the phone, what's going on here? You will light up that novelty center by tricking your audience in the same way as presenting them with something completely new. Your audience's brain, avoid cliches like the plague. Avoid cliches like the tax man, bing, 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 bing. Sometimes cliches are cliches for a reason because they work really well. They have they have a good comparison, they've got a good rhythm to them. So use what's good about cliches, use some of that familiarity, but then spice it up with your own unique taste. To use one of another many cliches, there's nothing new under the sun. Everything is built upon what has come before. So build upon some of the language and phrasing that's come before and put your own unique twist on it. I hope these suggestions will help you to avoid those cliches in your speaking. Give your audience that novelty, give their brains that dopamine release, and they will be hooked on what's coming next because they don't know what's coming next because they think they can predict you, but very quickly realize they can't. That wraps up our video in a nice little bow and puts the cherry on top. Right, let's just stop there. Stop there, I've had enough.